Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is Soap Opera Love, issue number 1, dated February 1983. This was an interesting title. Most of the Charleston romances that I've covered have been from the 70s. This is one that's in the 80s, although the early 80s. So in some ways, the basic formula has remained the same. This is obviously a new title. They don't have an advice page or letters page in this one, obviously. I know that this is a pretty well drawn comic book. Unlike the other ones where it was kind of a standard 3 stories, this one is 2 stories, and the main one is a bit elongated, and there is a follow up in the following issue, a conclusion to the affair. I likely will never know what happened. So anyway, we look at the cover. It's a very well drawn cover. We see a couple on the bed, very intimate. So this cover is immediately more adult than what we would see in the issues from the 70s. It's very well drawn, very realistically drawn. It's asking, should a Jewish boy and an Irish girl fall in love? Beginning in this issue, the continuing story of David and Eileen. So I don't know whether they just intended this to be a 2-parter or whether they intended this to sort of be a running saga. So rather than kind of not having the anthology-driven stories in what is normally expected in these comics, maybe they were trying to draw kind of like serialize one particular couple. It seems kind of odd, given that the main thrust is kind of this interfaith relationship. I got the feeling that there was a lot of personal energy in this story. So it was likely that the creator was probably in this situation. I don't know whether they were the male or female. Excuse me. And I'm not quite sure it was this type of real life designation, because maybe the person was in a quote mixed marriage, but maybe one of the partners was black, or maybe one of the partners was Muslim or Indian, and it's unlikely they would have published that story. But I guess maybe figuring Jewish boy, Irish girl, that's something they could publish. So I don't know whether the creator was actually in this relationship or it's kind of an analog to a similar relationship. It also has a lot of parallels to a TV show that had been popular 10 years early. It was called Bridget Loves Bernie, and it was about a Jewish boy marrying an Irish woman, and kind of all the zaniness that goes along with it. The husband would ask, what are they having for dinner during Yom Kippur, and the wife would go, oh, who's he? Stuff like that. So before I get into the story, I'm going to look at one of the ads here. It's for bodybuilding. And basically it's telling you that in 30 minutes or 30 days, 30 minutes, you can look like this very muscular man. I'm not quite sure how this sold in the romance comics. Definitely, it's something where Charleston had gotten a client, and they said we're going to put these ads in all our comics, whether it's appropriate for the audience or not. Okay, so I'm going to go into the story. The first story is called "I Know the Man I Want to Love." It deals with an attractive woman. Just give me a moment to get her name, because sometimes they don't put the name in the first page. It's Elaine. Okay, so this is the story of Elaine and Gus. We see Elaine here on the splash page. She's looking longingly at an airplane. It's not the airplane she's interested in per se. It's the pilot of the airplane, Gus. She's thinking about Gus, thinking that on one hand Gus is kind of the guy that I'd always dreamt of, but she's also saying that, hey, I also dreamt of a version of Gus with a lot of money, and the real Gus may not be rich. So this is sort of the struggle that Elaine is going through, because she had set her preferences into marrying a man of means and of wealth, and she's kind of falling for this guy who may not necessarily achieve that. And we're told here in the expository dialogue that Gus is a bush pilot in South America. And we'll see why he's doing that. It also says that, Eileen is quite taken with him, but she's concerned about his financial future. Same way we go kind of a flashback here. We see Eileen. She's going shopping with a friend. And at this point, Eileen had taken a job that will transfer her to South America. Apparently, she's working for an oil company. Oil company has a vested interest in Venezuela, where they have a lot of oil. And obviously, there's a lot of Americans kind of working at that facility. And Elaine has signed up to, I think, work the office there. And before she goes, one of the things she's doing, she's, quote, making an investment. And that's buying newer, sexier clothing. Because apparently she's not doing this move so much as a career move. She's doing this to sort of improve her prospects into finding a man with some means. Because apparently in this particular station, there's a lot of oil engineers, and apparently that was kind of a well-paying job at the time. So Eileen is hoping that her going down there and kind of circulating in that pool will get her the man she wants. Because she's making it clear that she wants a man who has means. She wants a man who has money. She still has standards, though. That's important. So she's not going to do an Anna Nicole Smith. She wants someone she loves, but she wants someone who can also bring home the bacon. We see some really nicely drawn art. There's kind of a watercolor feel to it. We see Eileen. She's talking about how these clothes are an investment. We see pervy guys kind of looking at her. She's very attractive. She's talking to a friend. Anyway, Eileen goes off to South America. She lands in Venezuela, and she's met by the assistant personnel director of the facility. So he's the guy who kind of like acclimates new employees to the country, because they're in a completely new country. They're in a completely new culture. He'd mentioned that air conditioning is very important and that there's an awful lot of it here in the hotels and the cars and so forth. So I got the feeling that the person who came up with this story, they had a lot of personal knowledge about Venezuela, and they loved the country, because this is very much a loving story of that country. So anyway, the director is kind of a nice guy. I mean that. It's kind of a nice guy. He's kind of a little bland and kind of like, kind of the corporate model. And then suddenly, as he's talking to Elaine, the bush pilot shows up. And this is Gus. And Gus is kind of this likable rogue. He's very much in front. He's very much a charismatic guy. He's a take charge guy. He's the guy who will swoop in and say, hey, how you doing? And he doesn't mind kind of twinking his nose at the corporate types in the office. So, we see that Gus and Eileen, they're kind of hitting it off very well. So she's kind of like, she's fine with the guy. And it turns out that Eileen, she gets to the place, she's being introduced to a lot of the personnel who's working there. I guess whenever there's a new employee, particularly a young, attractive woman, it's going to generate a lot of interest. We see that the guys, they're very well dressed here. They're definitely kind of taken with her, and she's anxious to kind of explore her new surroundings. So she goes into her hotel room, air-conditioned hotel room. So they emphasize that. So I guess Valenzuela, for all the positives, is probably pretty hot there. Eileen is thinking to herself, hey, that these oil engineers, they make like $50,000 a year. And before they're 40, these guys are going to be rich. So I guess it's kind of like one of those things where these guys work 20 years at that high salary. I guess they're in Venezuela, maybe they're taxed at a very low rate, and they must be accumulating this money. So anyway, Eileen, she steps out of the hotel and she encounters Gus again. And Eileen's fine with Gus. And the two are talking. Eileen kind of wants, Gus wants to show Eileen around the place, get an idea of the country that she's in. Eileen mentions that she thought Mr. Leland, who was the assistant personal director, would pick her up. But Gus says, oh yeah, he was a little busy, so I decided to take it. So Gus kind of brings up dinner, and I think Eileen is kind of hungry, and Eileen thinks they're going to have dinner at the hotel. I guess that's what most of them do. However, Gus says, no, I'll show you the real Venezuela. I hope I'm pronouncing that name of the country correctly. So anyway, Gus goes to this place that he knows. It's a local place, but it's a very classy place. Eileen is introduced to the maitre d', who Gus knows very well because he often comes to this place. Gus and Eileen, they're vibing, they're kind of slow dancing. She's surprised that there are guys who actually know how to do this. Because people were not slow dancing on American Bandstand. And the two are hitting it off very well. Some really beautifully drawn out. I should say that Eileen kind of looks a little like, I guess the standby would be Jill St. John, maybe a little like Elsa Fisher. I can't decide what Gus looks like. Gus looks a little like Michael Landon, so I'll kind of stick with Michael Landon. The maitre d' tells the dancing couple that their dinner's ready. Oh no, your dinner's gonna get cold because you guys have been dancing so long. So they have dinner. They're talking about money at this point. Gus is making it clear that he's not there for the dollars. And then he's really enjoying his life and he's enjoying his existence in this country. And Eileen's questioning him that, you're very capable of doing other things that will pay you better. And Gus is like saying, yeah, but you know what? Honestly, I would rather kiss you than get a raise. Eileen is kind of like, kind of taking this as a little joke. Very, very nicely drawn art. Again, it kind of has that nice little watercolor feel to it. And then we see Mr. Leland. He shows up. Apparently, he was supposed to be picking up Eileen. So Gus lied, and he kind of swooped in and grabbed her for himself. Mr. Leland's kind of pissed off about this because he needs to know Eileen. And two, obviously because Eileen's an attractive woman, he kind of figures he can get a little hanky-panky in. Eileen is innocent of this situation. She wasn't aware that Gus had done this. but at the same time, she's making it clear that she's there because she wants to be with Gus. Because Mr. Leland said, I'm going to call the police and say that you kidnapped her. Gus laughs that off. Eileen is not taking it seriously. So Mr. Leland kind of slinks away because he knows that his bluff was called. Gus is explaining the situation as to why he did that, because Eileen's asking. And basically, Gus is saying that, listen, I have to compete with these white-collar guys, and they have certain built-in advantages. So I have to circumvent their sort of traditional route of doing things. Because Gus's feelings is that when someone like Eileen shows up, he's never going to have a shot at her because the white collar guys will sort of monopolize her time there. So he kind of like, he has this competitive streak, and he kind of gamed the system too. So anyway, it turns out that one of the jobs that Eileen has is kind of supervising the mail run. So basically what happens is employees at this particular base, they would write letters to their families, or they would send out reports to the main office. And Gus, because he's the pilot, he would pick up the mail and make sure that it's delivered. So that's basically his job. Gus, along with he has a co-pilot named Alfredo. And Gus asks us, hey, do you want to come with us? And, take this airplane ride with us. Eileen accepts. I guess Eileen's not really on the time clock per se. I mean, her job is to make sure that the mail's delivered. She kind of fidged the truth, claiming that, yeah, I had to go along to make sure that the mail, got to, where it's supposed to be. And so they're flying off. Really nicely drawn artwork. This is very much commercial artwork here. So Eileen is talking to Alfredo, the co-pilot. And he's filling in a little bit more about Gus and his business model. The impression that Eileen got was that Gus was a corporate employee. But it turns out that Gus is actually a contractor. He's an independent contractor who has a contract with the oil company. So he sort of has he's sort of an employer, but he's kind of not an employer. So, so Gus is explaining that he really loves Venezuela. He set up a private company. He hires only locals. So Alfredo, the co-pilot, he's a native to Venezuela. All his mechanics are natives to the country. So he doesn't bring in outside talent from the United States like the oil company would. He largely focuses on hiring people who are already there. So Gus has very strong roots to Venezuela. This is like his adopted country. And they're kind of talking about the oil company. The oil company really wants Gus to be an official employee, but he's been able to resist that. And he's also saying that he really loves living in Venezuela. He would rather live there than in New York. So this is creating a conflict for Eileen, because Eileen still has that, top dollar preference. But at the same time, the guy that's kind of like the man of her dreams doesn't have the bank account of her dreams. So an office employee is talking about the plane service. Apparently, there's a party being held, and the host of the party invited Gus, and she wants to invite Eileen. So this is sort of like an indirect kind of matchmaking situation here. Because again, why would you not want Eileen? Eileen's beautiful. She has a nice personality. She's a little materialistic, but she doesn't let it get in the way of her friendships. And then we see that there's this private party being held. It really looks like a whole lot of fun. I'm guessing the person has terrific memories of their parties, of those parties down there. We see a young attractive woman. She's dancing on the table. We see guitar players. We see people just talking and milling about. And Gus is talking to Eileen, and Gus is letting Eileen know that he's building a house and that it's not fully furnished. It's, quote, half furnished, kind of saying that I'm waiting for that other half to enter my life. And basically Gus is saying, listen, I'll have the place finished, but I'm going to have it finished by the woman who marries me and who loves me. So that's kind of the conceit at the moment. Gus is saying that he never thought that the woman he's looking for would come into his life, and he's kind of hinting to Eileen that she kind of is in my life right now. Eileen is sort of kind of getting the hint. She doesn't want to. She has feelings for Gus, but again, the money is still a problem for her to overcome. And then Eileen changes the subject, and the two continue on partying. Again, they're just having a lot of fun, a lot of really good drawn artwork. Eileen is thinking to herself that as much as she likes Gus, the issue of the money is still a problem, because she knows that no matter how good a bush pilot he is, he's still a bush pilot. So there's kind of a financial, I guess you could say, ceiling on his potential income. So then it turns out something happened. So the party's interrupted, and it turned out that Gus's company, his bush pilot company, has two airplanes. And one of the airplanes, which was being flown by Alfredo, is missing. And it turns out that they got the news. They don't really know where he crashed, though they know he did crash. I think the father of Alfredo is very concerned here. Gus is trying to relax and calm him down, saying that Alfredo is a tough guy, and that, you know, if anyone can make it out alive, it's going to be him. So then Gus is determined to become part of the search team, because he knows the area. He has a plane, so he can definitely be involved in the search. It turns out the military is also involved. I guess they didn't have very much to do, or they're such, like, you know, they're so bonded to the oil companies that they're just going to do whatever they ask. Like, you know, you need our military, fine. So what's happening right now is that Eileen is sort of coordinating the search effort. So apparently she's like overriding all these trained military officers. And, well, hey, you know, that is white privilege right there. So Eileen's in contact with Gus. And it turns out Gus has found Alfredo's plane. And we see here that Alfredo's still alive, though it looks like his leg is injured. And Gus makes a landing to right where Alfredo is. Alfredo's concerned about his friend Gus. He recognizes the plane. Gus comes out. He calls out to Alfredo. Gus informs Alfredo that there's going to be a medic helicopter coming soon. However, Alfredo's concerned with other things. Now, they have two planes. The one that Alfredo was flying crashed. But the one being flown by Gus, that one is damaged, almost beyond repair, because Gus had made the decision to land on this plateau. So now this air company has no planes. And one of the planes could have been saved had Gus not made that, I guess, seemingly rash decision to land. So that's what Alfredo's worried about. He's worried about the health of the company. Gus is saying that, listen, when a friend is in pain and he's in need, I'm not going to think about stuff like that. I'm going to think about helping him. So then Alfredo's, he's medically evacuated. He's fine. He just has to get a cast and stuff like that. Eileen is happy that Gus made it out alive, and they're embracing. And however, Eileen is holding to those preferences because as she's embracing Gus, she's immediately thinking that this mofo is broke. He doesn't have planes. His company is going to go under. The man I love is a financial mess. And however, she's still hanging by Gus. Gus immediately basically asked Eileen to marry him, because she's saying, listen, remember when I said I want my wife to finish the second half of the home? I want you to finish the second half of the home. Eileen accepts it. So Eileen is fully aware of the financial hole that Gus seems to be in. But she says, you know what, I love this man so much, I'm gonna modify my preferences. He's a guy who may not have money, but he's a guy who can kind of make money, and whatever financial hole we're in, we'll get out of it. Elaine mentions that listen, you know what, even if you have nothing to your name, I'm going to still stick by you. However, Gus says you don't have to worry about that. He says that, you know, the oil company has been after him to be a full-time employee of theirs. And they wanted Gus to upgrade his air fleet anyway. Because obviously if Gus is going to be an employee of the company is going to supply the plane. Unlike contractor Gus, who had to supply his own planes. And Gus also says that, hey, I had insurance on that stuff. Yeah, one of the planes is totally screwed because I intentionally screwed it, but hey, I know the officials, I know there's a little corruption there, I know how to handle the situation. So it turns out that Eileen is thrilled that they're not going to be poor. You know, Eileen was prepared to be poor, but she's like, thank God that's a bullet we dodged. Eileen ends the story by informing the readers that her plan worked out perfectly. She found the man of her dreams. She also found financial security. And she said that, you know what, but even if he didn't have the financial security, I still would have married him. And that is the end of the story. Yeah, I think these two will make it. They're being pretty honest with each other. I guess they're being at least honest with themselves. Eileen is honest with herself. She's obviously, she was kind of hinting about the money issues with Gus, but she was going to accept him no matter what. Gus loves this chick. I guess the only thing that seemed out of whack was when the beautiful Caucasian Eileen came down. Gus and the other guys kind of acted like they had not seen a beautiful woman in years. I think that's actually written somewhere in the comic. Valenzuela has a lot of beautiful women. A guy like Gus, who was dedicated his life to being, you know, one of them, he definitely would have looked at the local talent pool. But again, they're not going to get into this stuff in 1983. So that's it for that story. We kind of see an ad here. It's Rub the Buddha for money. I'm sure they suckered some kids into it. $7, you get a little statue, and you can kind of perversely rub this kind of overweight man-child. Okay, so this is a small little one-page featurette. I guess it helped them keep in their format of 3 little stories. We see events in women's lives that traditionally they've been told this is what they desire. And I suspect most women do desire these things. And they're done in a specific order, and I suspect many women, either if they went through all four of these phases, they did not necessarily go through this order exactly. There are probably some women who kind of didn't go through a couple of these phases at least. So anyway, we see a young couple. They're talking about how no girl will forget the moment in which she first realized she was falling in love, or the night he proposed. And of course, they mentioned the wedding here, and then the birth of a child. Yeah, like I said, not every woman went through all four of these, and not every woman who did go through all four did so in this order. Okay, so we can move on to there's kind of a puzzle here. Find a word. Lots of material for women's clothing, like nylon, denim, dacron, silk, canvas. Okay, so if you're like into fashion, you probably do well with this puzzle. Mind control, how to make others secretly do your bidding. It'd be interesting to read that. You can get started in 3 minutes. I mean, the only way this really works is that if this is how to start a cult. Okay, so we're going to go into our main story. And it's called David and Eileen. This is part 1. This is the interfaith story where a Jewish man marries an Irish woman. As a kid in my real life, I don't recall too many issues involving interface. I knew a couple. They were an Irish couple, and they wouldn't go to their daughter's wedding because she was marrying an Italian. And this is I remember this is around 1989. And that kind of struck me as very strange. I mean, at this point, why would you even care? But nevertheless, there are people who do care a lot. So anyway, we're told, this is told from Eileen's point of view. One of the things that makes me doubt whether the person who wrote this story put a lot of passion into it, may not have had this coupling, was this story kind of reminds me a lot of that TV show Bridget Loves Bernie. And I'm not sure whether maybe the person was a fan of that show and was basically doing another episode. But nevertheless, based on the care and the detail, I think something similar like this happened to the creator. So we see that Eileen, I'll finally get into the story, Eileen is telling us that she grew up in an old-fashioned Irish family. It was very strict, and that for her to be with a man, they had to approve of that young man, and one of the conditions was, the background. They were Irish Catholic. They were from a certain part of Ireland, and the boy had to match that, along with the boy or the young man being on good terms with them. So obviously her dating life is very restricted. She's a good girl. Whatever mommy and daddy wants, she's gonna follow through. This is sort of her rebelling. And she's up in the Catskills on vacation, and she meets a young man named David. She's really taken by David. The two are romantically attached to each other. David compliments Eileen on her Irishness, talking about her name, Eileen O'Brien. That's like calling Eileen O'Brien, that's like being called Irish McIrish. And Eileen's talking to David about his Jewish background, and how if her father had seen her and knew what they were doing, which is kissing each other, he would be he'd be beside himself. Um, so we see the two there. Really, really nicely drawn artwork here. So the story opens up with Eileen. And Eileen is saying goodbye to her date. Her date kind of looks like Thomas Jefferson. And the two are shaking hands. This is a young man that Eileen had been dating for a while. His name is Tom Fogarty. His name comes into the story later on. And so it looks like Eileen has kind of friend-zoned Timothy here, I should say. But Timothy is okay with that. So, I mean, it doesn't look like Eileen has deep feelings for Timothy, but it seems mutual. I don't think Timothy has deep feelings for her. However, the parents, Eileen's parents, they're snooping in. They're very disappointed with Timothy. Timothy hasn't stepped up. He hasn't shown himself to view their daughter as, marriage material, because they want to marry her off, but they want to marry her off in a way that's approving to them. Timothy kind of checks a lot of the boxes that the parents are looking for. So, good girl Eileen, she enters her home. She lives with her parents. The father is speaking about Timothy very disapprovingly, saying, "My daughter is hot, and he doesn't know how to treat a hot chick." The mom is mentioning, "Do you really want Thomas Jefferson pawing, our daughter here, knowing that Tom has a history of inappropriate sexual behavior historically." However, the father is checking in with Eileen, saying, "How do you feel that this relationship is progressing? Because I'm kind of souring on this guy, and your mom is saying, still give him a chance." Eileen's saying, "Everything's fine." You kind of sense that she doesn't really truly believe it. She doesn't dislike Timothy. She just doesn't have any passion for him. I would say Eileen, in terms of looks, she kind of gives a Peggy Lipton look. If you remember Peggy Lipton from the Mod Squad, it's sort of how she kind of looks. And then we see that Eileen had gone, I guess, to the Catskills, because that's the stereotypical Jewish thing to do, even though they're not Jewish. But she meets David, who is there. So this is probably the Catskills, and it was very much a kind of a Jewish stronghold. A lot of Jewish comedy came from there. And David is talking to Eileen. Eileen is kind of poolside here. David looks like he has like a kind of like a jumpsuit on, and they're just kind of introducing each other here. Honestly, David kind of comes across as a creepy guy in some of his actions and also the way he looks. Obviously, the person telling this story was quite smitten by him, so she might not have been aware of the creepiness because she kind of liked the guy, didn't consider it being creepy behavior. But David is engaging in creepy behavior. One of the things he immediately asks is, can he rub lotion on Eileen's back? Which, Eileen immediately allows this stranger to do. He kind of looks sweaty here. He kind of looks like Squiggy from Laverne and Shirley. And he even sort of has that, even though he's drawn as a good-looking guy, he sort of has that greasy, matted hair. So yeah, David, and he's also in a bathrobe, even though he's poolside. So there's a creepiness with him. Turns out David works for the hotel, but he doesn't work for the retail arm. He works in the office, so he's the accountant. So he's kind of an employee, but at the same time he doesn't have to service the customers or the visitors. So he's kind of creeping on the guests on the side personally. So David is kind of asking about Eileen and whether she has a date or not, and whether she'd be interested in going to the casino. Eileen, I like this move. This is a nice move. Eileen accepts the date offer, but she changes the terms. So she's saying, listen, I already promised that I would be hanging out with another group, but you can come along as my guest. That's a nice, slick little move by Eileen here. So I kind of like what she's doing here. Eileen came with a cousin, I believe, and the cousin does not approve of her being with a Jewish man. So these are hardcore Irish, which is weird because, like, I'm Irish, and Irish people don't necessarily have a huge affinity to only be with just Irish people. We kind of go around the gambit in terms of who we're with. So most Irish people are not going to care if their kids are dating a non-Irish person. But it's a big deal here. We see Connie. Connie is like saying, say goodbye to this guy. And she's basically saying that him being Jewish is strike 1, 2, and 3. And she's not flexible on this. She's drawn very beautifully, though, I will say. Again, the art in this story is really good. However, Eileen's not hearing about it. She's saying just because he's Jewish doesn't like infer anything else, and she enjoys being with David. So so Eileen and kind of sort of creepy David, they're on the dance floor here. They're dancing somewhat close, but not terribly close. It's not an intimate dance. We see it's kind of like a house band here. They're having fun. The two are getting closer and closer. It turns out that David also has interfaith issues with his family, in that they're from a strict Orthodox family. So they don't want to hear David not being with a Jewish woman. And probably they would want David to be with a strict Orthodox Jewish woman, because I'm not Jewish, but I know Judaism kind of, there are certain spectrums and degrees. You have people who are ultra Orthodox Jews, and they follow the religion extremely strictly.
The Jew with the black clothes and the curls and everything?
They're called Hasidim.
I see them, but I don't believe them.
And then you have other people who are cultural Jews. They're not religious per se, but they view the traditions as something that they would still uphold. So a religious service would be more like tradition to them. But David is from the kind of the religious right. Eileen's saying that they're being ruled by their parents and that they shouldn't be doing this. We're just simply having fun. So the two are getting closer and closer. So they do have this bond here. And then they go outside for a moment to be by themselves. And then it's clear from these two panels that the two of them are getting closer and closer. So at this point, they're just sort of romantically involved. David's telling Eileen how beautiful she is. Eileen still has a little bit of distance, because even though she's clearly falling for David, there's a part of her, the good girl part, that still wants to make her parents happy. And Eileen sort of wants to take a break from this, because she knows where her feelings are going to lead her, but she's not sure she wants to have those feelings. David is saying, I know what's going on with you and the angst, but you can't deny your true feelings. Eileen goes to Connie, her frenemy cousin. Immediately, Connie wants to know, hey, did he do something not legal? And Connie just hates David. David, who actually does look a little like, trying to think who he looks a little like, I was going to say Dick Cavett for a moment. He kind of looks like Parker Stevens. So he looks a little like Parker Stevens. She looks, again, like Peggy Lipton. So anyway, and Connie kind of looks like, short hair Angela Cartwright. So yeah, she's very nicely drawn, Angela here. So anyway, Eileen is talking to Connie. Connie's thinking all the worst things possible, but Eileen only has the best thoughts about David, and she's basically been falling in love with the guy. So then we see her sleeping. She can't sleep. She has like too many things going on in her head. She's mostly concerned with the parents though, because she's saying, listen, I don't care if the guy's Jewish, but my dad does. And she's still bothered by that. Again, she's a good girl. And you get these Irish good girls, they're really hard to change. The Italian good girls are just the same way. So anyway, we see David, he meets Eileen. Eileen kind of ignores David. And Connie again is treating David like he's radioactive. She's really anti-Semitic. And Eileen kind of feels bad because she's following the plan of trying to make sure David doesn't get in too deep into her life. But she's really feeling bad about what she's doing. Connie's like being a good cult member, kind of reinforcing that kind of wavering member, saying that the cult of anti-Semitism, it is as strong and it is as right as ever. So anyway, Eileen's looking back. She notices David. Eileen and Connie are horseback riding, and David is biking. So, oh no, he's not. David's not that much of a rebel. David is good girl friendly because he's taking a bicycle and to follow Eileen. Eileen meets up with David. She gets down from the horse. She says good morning to him. David's like, listen, I know what's going on here, but I think it's too late for both of us. And Eileen's saying, what is it too late for? And David just says, falling in love. And Eileen just gives in. She admits it. The walls come down. She embraces David, creepy David to us, but nevertheless the David she loves, and they are in love. So the two of them at this moment is a very nice one, but they also are aware they have future problems to deal with. One of them is that Connie snitches Eileen out to her mom, Connie's mom. So basically, Eileen's aunt comes down to the hotel to pick up the girls, and she is giving Elaine a tongue lashing here, saying, how dare you bring this Jewish element into our lives? How dare you do that to yourself? So she's getting a lot of resistance from the family. They drive off, so I'm sure Elaine is probably still getting an earful from that aunt. But the thing is, the aunt took Eileen. Mind you, Eileen's a grown woman, but nevertheless she's been infantiled by this family. She takes Eileen out of the hotel so quickly that Eileen actually doesn't get an opportunity to leave David any type of contact information. Remember, this is 1982, so I don't even think beepers were really around at this point. And they just came out with cordless phones, so the technology to contact people was not great back then. However, David is able to find Eileen at work, and Eileen's surprised about this because this is pretty good stalker methods here. But it turned out that Eileen's earlier would-be boyfriend, Tim Fogel. Tim Fogel is a friend of David. And it was Tim who said, hey, listen, Eileen's a great girl, but we're not vibing. And if you want her, you go for her. You're a good guy, David. So Tim was being a good wingman there. So David and Eileen, they're talking. Again, the two are getting closer. Beautifully drawn artwork here. But David is officially dropping the question about marriage, and she accepts. So these two are gonna make it. The two kiss. There's an old woman who looks disapprovingly at them. I have no idea why. There's nothing that would physically make these two stand out in any way, other than they're young and attractive. Eileen's concerned about her parents and their reaction. David's admitting the same thing. They're going to say, listen, your dad may not accept me, but my dad may not accept you. So they agree to elope. And they figure once they elope, there's no way that they could, stop this marriage from happening. So they go down to town hall. They get a blood test. I think when you got married back then, you had to have blood tests. I think it was the test for genetic similarities, or maybe if one partner had something the other didn't have. Sometimes they would stitch out the partners. If it shows that at one time you had hepatitis, or herpes, or some type of SD, some type of sexually transmitted disease. So anyway, the two are married. The two are going to get married because they already have the license. The blood test came out fine. They're both. Eileen's her parents' reaction is weighing on her, but nevertheless she's happy to do it. They go to the justice of the peace. It kind of looks like Harry S. Truman, after he retired from being president, he became a justice of the peace. Because this is basically, it looks like who they're getting married by. So the two are married. David, his last name is Goldman. Again, very stereotypical names. So the justice of the peace wishes them well. And they have the ceremony. They even have people who will pour alcoholic drinks and drink them to sort of kind of liven up the mood. So those people kind of jump in. They have a nice little ceremony. And at this point, David is sort of breaking the news to his parents. And David is telling the dad over the phone, she's not Jewish, she's Irish, she's a Gentile. So, and the father hangs up on him. So they know at least he's going to be a problem. Eileen is going to have to contact her parents. She's hoping for better luck. She did not get it, by the way. Oh boy, that father is such a bigot. Anyway, the two are going through this crisis during their wedding night. You see an official price guide ad. I guess these were really early on. I don't know how they got it. I guess they went to a bunch of comic stores and conventions and they just saw what the general price range was. Okay, so now we go back to the story. Eileen is informing her parents. The dad's flipping out. He's very well drawn here, but nevertheless, Just the name alone was able to trigger this guy's Judar. So when he said, "What's his name? Goldman?" God damn it, you got one of them, you know. So anyway, the father says you can't even be married to this guy. So he doesn't even officially recognize this as a marriage in his eyes. Eileen says that he forbade me to marry you. David says, "Hey, a little late for that, Mrs. Goldman." Kind of sticking it to the parents. The two embrace again, just beautifully drawn artwork here. Then we see the two are sleeping. Eileen again, she's a little troubled, bothered by the parents' reaction. David's sleeping soundly. However, this changes. Also, David kind of looks like Jack Tripper's friend, Larry, in Three's Company. So anyway, there's a knock at the door, and it turns out that both parents are at the door, with Eileen's father being the loudest. So anyway, so the two burst into this couple on their honeymoon night. These two adults, mind you. The Irish father is completely pissed off. He needs to be restrained because he wants to belt David right in the mouth. And he makes it clear that he did not want his kind with his daughter. However, the wife, David's mom, is a little more understanding of why David married her. And she says, "Look at her, Sam. No wonder David defiled us to marry a Gentile." So basically, David's mom is looking at her new daughter-in-law and is saying, "Wow, she is hot." And David's mom is like, "Whoa, well, this is the best Ireland can provide. Wow, I can see why David jumped the fence." However, the two are saying, "Hey, we're already married legally. We're kind of adults here." However, they won't. The Irish father, is not recognizing this as any type of wedding, so they're not married in his eyes. And the Jewish father is saying that unless the ceremony was conducted by a rabbi, this is not a marriage in my eyes. So then the two dads, they start arguing with each other. It kind of looks like the Jewish one loses because the Irish one is just so angry and bigoted. So listen, so anyway, the Jewish dad says, "Listen, you redneck Irishman." He's saying that Rabbi Schwartz will marry my David to your daughter. So it's not a marriage until it's done by a rabbi. The Irish father's like, "Hell no, that my daughter's going to be involved in any type of Jewish ceremony, and she's going to be married in a church. Even if she's stuck with this heathen, and I have to somehow tolerate him, he's gonna show up in a church." So then it ends with kind of a coupling here. David and Eileen just start kissing. They're making it clear that they're in love. The two fathers are yelling at each other, and they're still not getting along. Irish father still hates Jews. Jewish father says, unless we get our Jewish ceremony, nothing matters. The two moms are approving of this coupling, and the Jewish mom says to the Irish man, "Mom, hey, listen, we're gonna have to fix this. We'll make this work." So at least David and Eileen, they have the moms on their side. And then you would find out what happened in the second issue, which I likely will never see. So anyway, this was a really good issue. It's kind of interesting, really good art. So that's my review of Soap Opera Romance, issue number 1 from 1983, and I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.